Welcome to Friction Points, where we discuss the pressing issues in credit unions today and leave you with practical solutions that you can take action with. My name is Buell Collins. I'll be your host today, and we are going to talk about credit unions that are losing executives faster than they can replace them, retirements, turnover, competitive talent market, and boards that aren't sure what to do next. Fractional leadership is one of the most practical answers the industry has right now. Today, we're hearing from two people on the situation that know the solution from the inside. Zach Christensen will tell us why fractional leaders are a strategic pillar inside of credit union shared services. And George Estrada is a fractional CTIO who's doing the work right now. I'd like to welcome them both, and I'm going to set the stage for them to talk about fractional leadership and why it's important. It's not simply about filling vacancies. I think we've been doing that for a long time. It's really about giving credit unions immediate access to a very high level of talent and expertise that sometimes hasn't always been available to them. While the industry is navigating rapid technological change, increased regulatory pressure, and rising member expectations with fewer experienced leaders available to meet the moment, that makes a tough situation out there. So what we did here at Mitchell Stankovic is we launched the Credit Union Shared Services Initiative. And with that model, fractional leadership was one of our core strategic pillars. And this is a collaborative framework where credit unions can access proven leadership, specialized operational knowledge, and modernization expertise without carrying the full burden of traditional executive structures alone. What makes this conversation important is it challenges the assumption that leadership must always be full-time, permanent, or built internally to be effective. In many cases, fractional executives are helping institutions move faster, stabilize operations, accelerate transformation initiatives, and create continuity during periods of uncertainty. Today's discussion explores not only why this model is gaining momentum, but why many believe it may become a defining leadership strategy for the future in the credit union movement. All right, Zach, with all that being said, can you tell me, I know you were there from the beginning, okay, and you were a big part of this credit union shared service initiative and all the work that was put in there, but can you tell me why fractional leadership was one of the pillars and where that came from?
Yeah, so thank you, Buell, and I'm happy to have you as dual roles here today, both our host and moderator. Yeah, fractional leadership, I think, is I love that concepts often are brought into the fold, and then if you really dig into them, they're not new, right? This is something that we've seen before. I was going through some conversations earlier this morning with just some other work, and I'll bring this up later, but it just really kind of came down to the fact that even like your consultants that you bring in sometimes are fractional. They're fractional for a reason. They're bringing in different ideas, different things, and helping you solve for something you don't have in the industry or the institution right now. And what we're seeing is that our cooperative model really fits fractional leadership very holistically. We have always been those that of modest means, I will say, in the financial services industry. And so we are not the Bank of America's with multi-billion-dollar budgets in different departments. And our need is still the same in terms of the level of executive, the level of expertise to be able to safeguard and maintain our trust with our members. And so when that moment happens, and you don't have a budget to attract the most and best and brightest of those things, then why not bring one into the credit union industry and share that talent amongst credit unions? Because that CTO or CIO or even like a CMO or a CXO, they're going to be used to working with an organization that is probably thousands and thousands and thousands of employees strong, billions and billions of dollars in assets. Why not spread the wealth and do that for multiple? And our small credit unions, even more so, need that talent right now. And we know they don't have the budgets to bring on a CTO. They may not even have a VP of IT. So we've got to ensure that they're able to take care of their members as well. And so fractional leadership is holding up cuss just like modernized technology.
Yeah, I think that's great insight there. And one thing that I've seen, or I guess I've come to know here in the recent history is it doesn't matter if you're a credit union in Iowa or one in Connecticut or one in Oregon, you're often experiencing a lot of the same challenges. And if you bring in that high level of talent across those organizations, they can help with all those challenges because we're all experiencing the same pain, right? So it's not like we have to worry that a fractional leader won't be able to satisfy what we're dealing with. They're going to see the kind of the same things, going along here. So with that being said, George, you're now out there serving as a fractional, working with Cuss and doing some great work out there. What does that actually look like day to day, and what urgent need does this role did you step into?
So thank you, and thanks again for Mitchell Stankovich for hosting me here. So look, I want to clarify a couple of things very quickly, right? The because I think that there is there oftentimes, and I'm glad Zach brought up, that some things have been around for a while. So for example, consulting and what have you. But there is a really clear distinction between fractional and consulting. And if you don't understand that distinction out the gate, you're not going to get the value and return on that investment. And the primary difference is a consultant is just that, is a consultant. Okay, and those of us that have worked in industry for years, we like making fun of consultants, right? They charge a lot of money, and then half the people don't listen to them, right? So it's an ongoing joke with everyone. A fractional, though, has skin in the game, right? It's a longer commitment. You can't bring a fractional for 3 weeks. That's not fractional. That's consulting, right? It's a longer engagement. We're looking at about a year minimum, right? And there's some teeth there, whether it's X amount of hours per week or days per week. There's some teeth that you get the title because you're making decisions that have consequences that you're going to walk through. You have the same dynamics, even if it's on a fractional level with your peers. So there is skin in the game, and there's a name assigned to it. There's a title that goes to it. So that is very big distinction to keep in mind. And look, it's great because one of the things that a lot of credit unions, and this has been out there for a while, but what credit unions and medium-sized to smaller businesses, one of the challenges that they've had is that a lot of their existing executives are already functioning somewhat fractional, right? Because a lot of them are hands-on keyboard. They're doing a lot of day-to-day tasks. So the amount of time that they spend being focused on strategy and execution is very minimal, right? So there's a lot of that goes on. It's a different dynamic altogether, right? Because at first, the first couple of weeks, people view you as an outsider until they realize, no, there's a title, there's responsibilities, there are decisions. So that's the difference, right? That if you're bringing on someone as fractional, they are part of the team. And that's a distinction that will make or break a relationship, in the sense of, if you're looking at your fractional as a consultant, then maybe what you need is a consultant, right? But the other aspect that I would argue or bring to the table that I think is very rewarding for this is that there is a lot of good talent, and there's a lot of folks out there that can't afford that talent for a number of reasons. But conversely, good talent likes being challenged. Good talent likes having diversification of challenges. So someone like myself enjoys the ability to be able to work with different environments, different teams on a consistent basis, not just one-offs, right? And so that then creates this feedback mechanism of cross-pollination. So I'm learning one thing in one area and then find opportunities in another that I could cross-pollinate. The development of talent and skill is critical, right? Being able to identify the amount of time I spend a lot of time right now with some younger talent that we're developing at Rise to be the future leaders, right? My understanding is out the gate, I'm not going to be there forever. So who's going to replace me? Who's going to take that role? And so that's a great opportunity to use fractional executives to help prune and develop and mentor the next round of leaders.
I love that, George. I love what you said about that's a distinction and a difference with what a fractional is and a consultant, because sometimes that can get murky or the water can get a little muddy there on looking at that. And then the mentorship of future talent. If you are leading an organization right now and you have the opportunity to bring in someone that is a extremely high level talented person, the influence that that's going to have throughout your organization, the trickle down effect of that knowledge is incredible. And you'll start to see the people that maybe you didn't even expect start to grab onto that knowledge and starting to run with it. And now your organization is set up further into the future than the fractional leader will be there. That excellent points there, George. I love what you hit there. Zach, one of the friction points that we see is sometimes the board. They can be that friction point. This is new to them or they haven't experienced this. What are some of the common hesitations you're seeing with the board, and how can you help leadership make the case for fractional leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've got a counterpoint on George, but he
Oh,
is a
hit it.
consultant now, so I won't take too much offense at what he threw out there. But no, I completely get that. But I brought that up to segue into something as we get to the end of this. So you'll see why. But one of the other key things is that credit unions have a very unique organizational structure as an industry, we all know. One of the things to also remember is that some of our CUSOs are set up in ways where they act as if they are fractional as well. One of them that is within our CUS platform, which is DASO, not only are they working to build automations within the organization to kind of help you out, but then on the back end, they're running them and then they're updating them and they're making sure that they are staying so that you don't have to hire somebody to do that for you as well. So there's a lot of different distinctions there. Wanted to bring it in, but my favorite thing about George's comments was that doing that allows you to build and develop the rest of your staff. It also helps you to grow when you have that level of talent. And so small credit unions who are sharing a CTO or one of those chiefs, the idea here is that they grow to a place where they get to hire their own, right? And they're able to do that. And that's what we want to see. So the CEO is out there and the CEO can go be the growth officer and is out there building relationships and doing those things. Now, I just went through and I checked to see if we had any of our board members on here to see how far I can take this. And I saw you, Reed. I saw you were here. Our boards are absolutely wonderful. Sometimes there's just a misconception on what this means. It could be as simple as, well, if they're working for us and for another credit union, how are we maintaining, kind of our brand, who we are, and how are we making sure that they're not sharing strategy over there? One of the key things of that is that no, strategy kind of should be shared in some aspects because we want them to bring the best to both organizations, not to one. And it's really the same thing. If you hire somebody, just like George was saying, one person to do it, they're not just going to be doing that job. They're going to be doing 6 or 7 other things that you've added to their job description and or said other duties as assigned. So they're not going to be focused on what you need in that moment. And so it comes to education always. And so understanding who they are, what they do, what the impact could be is the most important. But then second is we have use cases upon use cases in credit unions that can be shared. We have, CEOs who are managing 4 credit unions right now. We have, I know there's a group of 10 credit unions in Tennessee that all share their C-suites, 10 of them. So this is not new to who we are and what we do. And those use cases are really, really vital to bring into the fold so that you can showcase what the impact is, how they're able to better serve their members, because that's the board's goal, right? Safeguard the credit union, safeguard the members' trust. And so what better way to do that than to have the best and the brightest working for you, and doing so where they're able to get executives who are grabbing information and experience across the board and not just funneled, and kind of a tunnel vision within just the organization as well.
Yeah, I love that. And a couple of things there, you touched on it, but that's the board's job, right? Their job is to really look after things and question certain things and make sure we're doing what's best for the members ultimately. And I like George's point too a moment ago about we're already wearing multiple hats. So that's something you can kind of say to the board is, hey, we're already doing this fractional thing. We're just bringing in some outside help and access to talent. And another thing that struck me there is we've seen this in our day-to-day life where we have a fractional like George and we're talking to another credit union and the work he's doing over there would fit perfectly right inside this institution. And there's no proprietary secret giving out. It's just a way to accelerate growth and member service. And it's like the easy button or the shortcut to getting things done. And what do we like to do? We like to get done. Okay. So, George, with that being said, fractional leadership is sometimes seen as a stopgap. You touched on that a moment ago with it's not a temporary thing. There is a time limit to it, but it's not a short window. So, how do we make fractional leadership a strategic asset that accelerates modernization rather than just being looked at as something that's filling a seat or a checkbox? Oh, yeah, we have that too.
Well, because I think so. So that's a great point, and I think you start with outcomes. Before you bring in the fractional CXO, what is the outcome you're driving to, right? What is that? Where do you want to go? And again, it's like if you're look, consultants are great, right? They help you, they challenge you, they come from the outside and bring ideas that you might have not been thinking of. They bring a little bit of the cross-pollinization. But look, we know across there's some big players that love camping out forever, right? Because it's and people get comfortable, and you have but there's no defined outcome, right? And so if you define the outcome, then you know where you're going. Ideally, you want also a fractional that is driving towards those outcomes. So the way you avoid that inertia is by defining those outcomes, where you want to go, and then focusing on what those particular fractional executives bring to the table. Again, I'm really big on a big part of this is that talent development from within, right? And a big part of it is also providing some goals, right? Measuring, like, what are the milestones to that? So, like I said, can't be too short, but if you're going to say, okay, we're going to do this for a year, what are the milestones that need to be delivered in that time frame? And professionals will be able to deliver. And I want to touch a little bit on the aspects of Zach was talking about regarding boards, right? Again, if you're presenting to the board, here are the outcomes that we're driving towards. This is the value proposition that they bring in. Again, like, not the gap that they're filling, but the value proposition. What is the value to the members? What is the value to the organization? And it's multi-layered. Then that conversation becomes a lot easier, right? Because now you're giving the board something that they could chew on, that they could question, that they could hold, folks accountable, including the fractional resources you're bringing on board. So there's it's a wide range of things, but it always comes back to, like, what are you driving to? And if what you're driving to is, we want to, let's say you're bringing someone like myself, a technologist in, and you're saying, look, we want to do some standardization, we want to do some modernization and weeding off of all the different partnerships. That's measurable. You could put dates to a lot of that, right? and drive to that. If you want to develop the skill, the talent, raise the digital IQ of the leadership team, those are measurable and deliverables that you could attach to that and drive to. And then you know if it's working or not very quickly.
Yeah, something I'd like a follow-up with you on that for a moment, George. Something we discussed previously with your experience now being at Rise was when you got there, you did a partner audit of the things they'd done in the past, right? That was a value add that you brought there with your knowledge and your eyes. Can you tell me a little bit about that, how you looked at the current agreements that they had and maybe some of the things that you found with that and how to drive efficiency in that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I spent 5 years at AWS, and I worked with a slew of vendors and partners across all industries. Prior to that, I was a CTO for a managed service provider. I was a partner myself with other big organizations. So what I did was look at the partnerships that we had and make a very quick distinction. And I reached out to every one of them and told them, you are a vendor till you prove yourself a partner. Here's one thing that I'll say that's a critical feedback to the credit union space and my brothers and sisters out there that are now, I'm part of the credit union space, so I could say that. But we're too nice. The same way that we get along with each other, that's one thing. But then we extend that to a lot of the vendors. And I will say vendors, there are some really good partners out there. But we extend that to every vendor. The amount of vendors that I was surprised that weren't even giving me the time of day to point me to the account manager. And I was like, well, are you kidding me? So so there's a level reset that has to happen. Right. And I was in a good position because coming from outside, I could ask those questions and drive. Well, now we have quarterly business reviews that are being scheduled. We have updates on all the services that they're providing for us. We're going through contracts and looking at SLAs, and that's just part of business. That's how it runs, And so what happens is that now we actually have really good partners. We got some really good partners that are very proactive in telling us, hey, you're paying for this, but you're not using it. Let's help you learn how to use it, right? Well, nothing's changed. The only difference was that we now are proactively saying, hey, let's be on a level playing field here. And one thing that I will say to everyone that watches this, when you meet with a vendor, when you meet with an account manager, ask them what their incentives are. I could tell you right out the gate, most big vendors, the incentive is to get airtime with the C-suite. That's invaluable, right? That's invaluable. And I say this because that's the part of the fractional that really delivers, right? Is that wealth of experience that I have from outside the industry and from being on the other side of the table, where it was very important for me to respect people's time, becomes invaluable when I'm sitting across the table with someone. So, I would say that we did a lot of that. We have a lot of really good partnerships right now in play. We have great conversations, and that's not there was no threatening, there was no banging on the table. It was literally just asking and saying, no, we need to be on the same level here. Okay, I want our partners to make money. I want them to be profitable. And in return, they need to help deliver value to our members and our teammates.
Awesome. Zach, you had something you
I
wanted
did.
to touch
I
on?
did. So now I get to bring this in because it's kind of perfect timing. And so, George, I'm gonna I'm gonna direct it to you because you're my counterpart here. First, a recognition to everybody in the room that the I won't even say opportunity. There's a tremendous issue that we have right now when it comes to executive talent in credit unions. All of you remember COVID and the pandemic. Do you all also remember how many CEOs announced retirements within 6 months of the pandemic hitting and everybody going to work from home. It was astronomical. But we were in a place where they already had successors and things. So that movement was very easy. Well, guess what? We're not that far from it, right? So those CEOs are now in the position for 3-4 years. We have another wave of CEOs and C-suites who are about to head out. And we are not prepared for that. And we also are not quite prepared to bring in outside talent that is making double what you can even get to at the highest level for that position. So we've got to think about this. And if you are truly looking at everything with a cooperative lens and making sure that we're not just acting like a bank, this makes sense. Fractional makes sense. Now, George, one of the as the AI stuff is all coming through, and you have been with us on that journey from the very beginning as we've been trying to integrate that for 6 years into thought leadership. I'm doing my best to learn as much as possible. So I love jumping on a YouTube and kind of hearing use cases on what they're doing with it, how they're using it, because then that sparks ideas for me on what I can do. But I laughed when I was listening to one of the guys saying, yeah, pretty soon we won't even need consultants. And I laughed because I'm like, what do you think you're doing on that YouTube right now, my friend? Like you're okay. But I think that there is a misnomer about that because I think some people, you may even have boards say, well, why don't we just get to a place where AI does that position? You know what I mean? And so I think that there's a really big piece to that and what AI can and cannot supplement when it comes to this kind of strategic level of leader. And then I'm also curious because the middle layer, that management layer is going to be the most affected by AI, and not because it's going to do their job. It's because the people they're managing are going to be gone or moved on to different places because they're the tactical and it's doing their job. So do you see the fractional piece filtering down to different levels as well? And then answer that AI piece, because I want people to just be very aware.
So look, I've written a lot on LinkedIn about this. I laugh, right, because everybody's like, it's going to be taking jobs away. It's going to be, and I'm like, I'm glad. Look, the ones talking and saying that, I can't wait for AI to replace them, right? Because they're being lazy. They're not even bothering to be somewhat creative. Look, it's clickbait, right? If I went and said tomorrow there will be no more fractional CXOs because of AI, I'll get probably more clicks on that post than anything else. But the truth of the matter is that that's not a fact. That's now what AI is doing, and this is one thing that I find fascinating and folks haven't really honed in. AI is helping identify the posers, right? For a long time, people could get away with saying X, Y, and Z. And yeah, that gentleman with the consultant is right. It's going to identify who the consultants were, that all they were doing was copy and pasting and putting something from a report. Because what AI does is it gets you 80% of the way there, but it's your history, your experience, your knowledge, your intuition that fleshes out that valuable 20%. Okay? And so what I look at it when I see that is that, I could tell now when I look at something that someone sends me, whether it was all AI or AI enhanced, because you know what? These folks, they really sift through and weeded out the garbage. And now they're combining their experience with what AI brought to the table much faster. So I think that's just going to be like that. It'll weed out people. It's going to make us better and stronger in many different fields. Now, to your point, where the fractional goes further down the road, absolutely. I think that there's going to be areas where a call center manager is more effective to have someone running the call center that's doing fractional work, right? But think about it in this manner. We all have very distinct talents, right? So someone who's more of a operations and execution person, right, can deliver more with AI tools in a shorter amount of time. So I don't need someone to do all the execution 5 days a week. I might need them 1 day a week. But then I need the people manager there 5 days a week because I want that human touch. So it gives me a way to configure teams in a way that I couldn't before, right? When you look at look at development right now, what's happening now is that the impact that it's having is that a lot of the folks that were product managers are really good at getting the most 50 to 60, 70% of the way developing an application without a team. So I know we're almost on time, so I'll slow down there.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. And we're going to hang around for a moment for some Q&A, and we can dive into that stuff a little more. But from both of you guys, I want to get a really important point out there before we wrap. And we'll start with you, Zach, and then we'll go to you, George. For a credit union CEO or board chair that's listening right now, why should they act on this today, and what does starting right look like?
Yeah, I think the urgency that I pushed about the level of executive talent not being available to us is why. And starting right begins starting to ask your fellow counterparts who are already doing it what's worked and what hasn't, just like we've done for 100 years throughout the history of credit unions.
And I would say that, think about what you could get at a fraction of the time and cost that it would get you, with a very small surface of risk, right? Because, when you hire someone full time, that's a big investment. The time, the onboarding, all that is very time consuming. And so you could bring someone with, again, identify that outcome so that you could be very focused and deliver on that scope. And then what was the second part of your question?
What does starting right look like? What's that critical first step to getting started?
Starting right is have the outcome that you're dying to push through, right? Like again, it sounds redundant, but without that, work your way backwards. If what you're trying to do is streamline your vendors and articulate what it is that you want to see, and then find that professional that can drive you there, that have them give you a proposal with a 90-day plan on how they're going to get you in the right direction. But start there and then keep it narrow focused. Don't go too wide. If you go too wide, you could ask for, well, if you go too wide, then you're going to need more time. That's the only caveat I would put in there.
Perfect. And if you want to explore how to start today, you can go to cus.mitchellstankovic.com and look at our fractional leaders and a breakdown of fractional leadership. There will also be a QR code here on your screen that you could follow. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. A great group joined us in here. I see a lot of names that I know in the group here. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Zach and George for sharing their knowledge. We're going to hang around for a few minutes and answer some questions. And we'd love to have you guys hang around and listen to some more Q&A here. So I have Christopher Wilson with a question for you. In addition to the development of internal talent, can you speak more about the team member experience of having fractional leadership? Is this a disjointed experience for the team members, partnerships, and collaboration? Which is a great question. What does that look like when the team sees a new fractional leader come in? Everybody's like, "Oh man, the new boss, same as the old boss." Or what does that look like from your experience, George?
Look, it's in the age of remote work, not too different. There's the key difference that I would say that is very important if you're the fractional coming in is really you got to bring in some discipline around asynchronous work, right? Because if you manage your day, the way you would being in an office, you're never going to have time to deliver, right? So you have to write very clearly, write at length, right? You got to provide substantive information so that when you do meet, it's a very productive meeting. As far as coming in from the outside to new folks, it's the same dynamics. Everybody is jockeying to figure out who's what, and so there's a little bit of that, but there is because being fractional is more time sensitive, right? You got to make sure you put an effort to meeting everyone, knowing them, providing the consistent guidance, right? So it's a little bit more compressed. You don't have the window to just meander until you figure out where the bathrooms are. You got to start off with where are the bathrooms, where's the printer, right, and get that right out the gate.
Yeah,
I
I love that. And I wanted to touch on something there. You know, fractional versus non-fractional leadership, we're all temporary at some point, right? I know we're working on a compressed time frame, but there's not really a major difference, especially if you do two critical things. One thing you really touched on, George, is start with the goal, right? What's the goal of bringing this person in? If the whole team is clear on the mission, right, then you're going to get better buy-in. And the other thing about this is, as the CEO or whoever brings in the fractional, set the plate for the fractional you're bringing in. Go in and have those conversations with the team, what our goal is, why we're bringing them in, and who this person is and how they can really benefit our mission here. If you do those two things, I think to the question, I think you're setting yourself up for success, and the transition and the disjointed experience that they may have is highly reduced. The likelihood of that is highly reduced. So Zach, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I love, and George, absolutely perfect. And I was curious, how you have kind of entered it with Jennifer and team at Rise there. Um, the culture and the member experience, both internal and external, is a big part of the things that I'm looking at and researching around AI and fractional. And so all very, very key there. The culture will set the stage for it. And if it's not prepped, if you are not in a place where you truly have an empowered team, then it may not work. But Christopher, I also know where you're coming from, and your organization is a very different beast than some of the other ones. If you look at a smaller credit union, they're going to be very used to either seeing the CEO all the time, but they're always in their office because they're doing the 5,300 reports and they're doing everything, right? Or the CEO is out doing business development. So they're not seeing their leaders already. This is going to be something very typical for them, and they're empowered to do it. Second, a fractional should come into a department where you do have strong management. So if you have a management team there, we talked about the fact that we are building bench strength. And so the management underneath that fractional should be strong enough to carry out strategy, execute on the tactical, and maintain the team in between the times that the fractional is in or not in office, whatever that looks like, virtually or actually on premise. So it's a positioning thing, but culture that you already have in the organization is going to allow this, or could potentially make it fail. So if you are not set up for that, you'll find out quickly. But I think you probably won't even entertain it if you're not set up for it anyways. So
Yeah. Yeah, and goes back to that being the first person to tell you no, right?
yeah.
One thing I want to touch on, Zach, you touched on the word culture there, which is something that we focus on a lot, and I think it's very important to the movement itself. In the beginning, if we go back to the beginning of the Credit Union Shared Service Initiative, and you fast forward slightly and you look at the fractional leaders that we have, that we
Mhm.
offer as part of the initiative. Can you tell me how culture played a part in designing that roster or cultivating
Hmm.
that talent?
Very interesting. Yeah. So I think when you said, the very beginning times, I thought we were going back to the beginnings of credit unions, which actually is very, very, it actually ties in because Um, fractional leaders are another evolution of shared services that we had 20 and 30 years ago when the leagues used to do your marketing. Maybe you did the strategy, but they also were doing the strategy for credit unions. They were just pumping things out, right? Fractional leaders is another shared service that you all have, except now it's at a strategic level. The roster that we have are those that have that knowledge and experience of the then and now, right? They sit on that precipice. I always love the millennial Gen X, bridge of I can give me a floppy disk, I'll fire up that DOS prompt, or give me Chat GPT and I'll write you something today and I'll do that all within the same hour, right? Our fractionals that we have currently right now are those that have seen the movement go through where it's going and are also strategically very aware of what's going to be needed in the future. And so you can't just come out and say, oh, I was a CMO, so I'm going to be a fractional CMO. Sure, but you're probably actually just going to be a VP of social design or marketing. You're not going to be an actual CMO if you are not prepared and ready to provide strategic value back to that organization. And so our roster definitely is a culture of we know what's happened, but we know what the hell is coming, or at least we're going to be as prepared for it as possible.
And that strategic thinking is critical.
Yep.
George, I wanted to touch on something that I find to be maybe a barrier of entry or a hesitation in the mind of maybe some boards or CEOs. And they say, this person is splitting time. Am I going to get their full attention? And can you talk about during the selection process of a fractional, um, the importance of time management and how to find someone that is really going to, be able to direct their focus at that institution in those bursts of time that needed to be focused and how they can manage their time properly?
Well, I think that, so I would start with, look, if they are C-level executives, there's a certain level of expectation that comes with that, right? And part of that is that they're professionals. And what I mean by that is like, I have hours or percentage of time that I dedicate to Rise, but the expectation that I have as someone who's been in the C-suite for 20 plus years is that I do it till the job gets done, right? If I'm tracking a meter, there's a problem with me, right? Conversely, that's the expectation that on the other side, right? That I am going to deliver. So, here's the thing: if you already question whether this individual will perform the hours that they're committed, don't hire them. At that point, that question, don't even start, right? And so that's the first thing right there. As far as time management, again, if you're, I look at my peers in the C-level, they got there because they have time management, right? They got there because they could dedicate and focus and get the job done. And so, and if that means for me, that means I'm working over the weekend. That's been my career, right? So I expect, and I don't know any other peers of mine that don't have that level of dedication. But then again, that's why they're on the C-suite. But look, you got contracts, you have all those controls that you put in place. But then that's what makes milestones very important, right? Because then you have something to track to and measure to, right? So the key is, are they delivering? This is what's expected. So there's a couple of mechanisms you could put in place there. But to be honest, I think that's I would look at it that way, right? If out the gate I'm concerned that you're not going to be able, that you're not going to give me the time I'm contracting you for, I'm not even going to continue the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because, sometimes we make things bigger in our mind than they have to be and concerns. And I've heard that concern. And my reaction was very similar to your initial reaction is these, we're auditing this level of talent. They didn't get there by accident. They got there by hard work and dedication and the things you touched on. So as we're getting close to the wrap up here, what I want to give you both an opportunity to do is your big takeaway or your big action item, something you can leave everybody watching with as your big final point. What do you got for me, Zach?
Don't be, I no.
Here we go.
Yeah, I know. I was about to. Don't forget to put on the cooperative lens when you're looking at things. If you're looking at it and going, this seems too risky, this seems to go back and say, are you saying that because that's what your counterparts outside the industry would say? Or are you saying that because it truly would be too risky for credit unions? And if it seems so outside the box, well, God damn, that's why we were created, because our initial common bond was exclusion. So exclude the other stuff, exclude the other thought processes, and do it. Fractional leadership is not new. It's not a new concept for credit unions. And I say, let's maximize on the people we have been creating, these executives who are ready. Let's make sure they don't leave us, so we can pay them, keep them, and then they'll eventually be one of our CEOs.
Yeah. Awesome. George, what do you got?
One word, tension.
Yes.
Okay. Tension is good. Don't be afraid of tension. Yeah, as I've gotten older and what is the one thing you got to do, right? Lift more, run more. You got to challenge your body and give it some tension. If you don't, it atrophies and you become weak and frail. And so if you're bringing fractional, understand that there's going to be some tension. And if the fractional doesn't bring some tension, maybe it's the wrong fractional, right? And tension is not bad. It's okay. It's good. I'll leave you with this. Andy Jassy, Amazon has these leadership principles. And there's one that really used to bug me because it sounded very arrogant. And the leadership principle was leaders are right all the time. Right now, if you listen to that, that's pretty arrogant. Like a leader's right all the time. And it really bothered me. But when Andy Jassy took over from Bezos, he took time to do these 5-minute videos explaining all the leadership principles. And he explained that one in particular. And here's the explanation. What he said was leaders, so if we're all leaders, let's say we're all in the C-suite together, and we're looking at the ceiling, and I say, I think it's 16 feet. And Zach says, no, I think it's 12 feet. We should never say, let's call it 14 and a half and call it a day, right? Because that's wrong. We don't know what it is, right? But what we're doing is we're coming to an agreement because we don't want tension. No, what should happen is we should all figure out, I'll get on top of Zach's shoulders and try and figure out, we should not stop. We should be relentless till we figure out what the height of the ceiling is. Why? Because we're going to be making decisions that might be contingent on that ceiling height. And we're not going to get there without some tension, right? So I leave everyone with tension is good. It's healthy. And I think that's one of the value propositions of bringing some fractional services, because they're coming in from the outside, they're bringing a new perspective, and they're going to get the blood circulating. So I'll leave it there.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. The tension. I was right with you when you said that. I was like, I know where he's going, because I feel the same way. I feel the same way. So I really got a lot out of this. Thank you both so much for all your insights and sharing your knowledge with us all today. Thank you all for joining us. Join us on our next Friction Point, June 2nd, 10 a.m. Pacific. We'd love to see you there, and go out there and get some stuff done.